now. The meeting's being recorded, so if you prefer, you can face mute, and if you don't want to be on camera, we also have closed captions available. So there's a little button down at the bottom middle of your Zoom window where you can turn those on. It's live captioning. It's sort of automated, so it's kind of hilariously wrong sometimes. Like everything we do at the Collab Lab, this meeting is sort of governed by our code of conduct. So be kind to each other. If you have questions about specifics, it's there on our website. And then, if you're someone who already is kind of established in tech, if you have a job, if you're kind of doing well, you can maybe consider sponsoring us. We are a nonprofit. All of our operating expenses come from donations. So with that, I don't know, Rachel, if you were prepared to introduce Lyle, but you can either do it or I can do it. No? Okay. All right.
I can do that. I was just trying to find my unmute. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So,
go for it.
Let's welcome Lyle. Is it Schemmerling?
Well, Schemmerling.
Schemmerling. I was like in my head. I'm gonna mess it up. Schemmerling. Lyle is a full stack developer based in Portland, Oregon. He is also a mentor with the Collab Lab. And we were just talking earlier, and he enjoys programming in both JavaScript for full stack and in Java. And so, yeah, welcome, Lyle.
Hey, thanks. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen before I start, gabbing too much. So we got it up there. Let me know when you can see it. I'm going to move all of your faces into the right spot, so I'm talking at the right thing.
You can see it.
Cool. And then I might try to share a YouTube and just a clip real quick and see how that goes. If it doesn't play well, we can kind of sum up and move on. But I will start here. So talk I wanted to give today is going down rabbit holes. We're going to specifically talk about sudo and super users, and then at the end, I would actually like to have a little bit of discussion about, doing the act of kind of going down a rabbit hole and looking stuff up, and is it a waste of time or is it not? So just fair warning, I'm offering up at the very beginning that I might be wasting your time with this talk. So onward, here we go. Again, thanks for the introduction. One more time, who am I? My name is Lyle Schemmerling. I'm a senior full stack software engineer. I actually just left the job I was currently with today, and we'll be starting my next one tomorrow at a startup out here in Portland. So I don't want to get too deep into the details there, but just, kind of in between things and moving on. I got my bachelor's degree from the University of Colorado, CU in 2009. I'm highlighting the word CU here for a reason. We'll get back to that in a second. I got, a psychology degree and ended up working at PetSmart for a few years after that. I wasn't really going places that I wanted to go, so I ended up, reapplying and going and getting a master's in computer information systems from the Colorado State University, actually from the Colorado State University Business School. So sort of not really a traditional bachelor's software path, but at the same time, not doing the boot camp path either, somewhere kind of in between. As part of that also, I kind of started as I was working through my master's program, or just getting into it. My father was working for a company called Xilinx out in Longmont, Colorado. Ended up starting doing a little bit of internship stuff there. Then as part of my education, got another internship where I was working in Java code, and then kind of kept on from there doing the full stack engineering thing. And that was I think about 2011, 2013 when I first kind of got those couple of internships. So right now we're going to flip over. We're going to do the, just show a clip from Marathon. Let me make sure that my audio settings are set to share audio as well. There it goes. Cool. And we're going to play this real quick. I'll set up this clip if you haven't seen it before. This is from the Wrath of Khan. This is the second Star Trek movie. In it, Khan is effectively a space pirate who has commandeered another ship from the Starfleet and just got done kind of surprising and doing a lot of damage on the Starship Enterprise. And now he's demanding information from Captain Kirk Admiral Kirk and the crew here. And this is how Kirk kind of responds to that situation.
Admiral.
Please, please, you gotta give us time. The bridge is smashed, the computer's inoperative.
Time is a luxury you don't have, Admiral. Admiral?
It's coming through now, Com.
Sorry, it's a little bit soft, so you can't hear it very well. I apologize.
Reliance prefix number is 16309.
I don't understand.
You have to learn why things work on a starship.
Each ship has its own combination code.
To prevent an enemy from doing what we're attempting.
Using our console to order Reliant to lower her shield.
Assuming he hasn't changed the combination, he's quite intelligent.
15 seconds, Admiral.
Khan, how do we know you'll keep your word?
Oh, I've given you no word to keep, Admiral. In my judgment, you simply have no alternative.
I see your point. Stand by to receive our transmission. So, lock phasers on target and await my command.
Phasers locked.
Time's up, Admiral.
Here it comes. Now, Mr. Spock.
Sir, our shields are dropping.
Raise them!
I can't!
Where's the override? The override!
Fire.
Fire!
And boom, and the spaceship blows up. Okay, so I play that because it's a fun little sci-fi clip, but mostly because what you saw just happen was, Kirstie Alley's character asks, basically, hey, what are we doing? And Captain Kirk responds with, you need to understand why things work on a starship. And then he proceeds to basically use, Starfleet admin privileges on the other ship, takes down their shields, and is able to, get one back on Khan. And then the rest of the movie happens. It's a great movie. By the way, I apologize. There may or may not be a train running through in the background. Bear with me. It's what happens when you live next to a train track or a loud train track. So back to the slides. Let's talk about what we're doing. So in that, Kirk uses the administrator privileges. I'll come back to that clip in a minute. It definitely is relevant, I promise. But here's another cartoon from XKCD that kind of illustrates what we're talking about. So the joke is, make me a sandwich. The person says no. Says sudo, make me a sandwich, and the person comes back okay. If you've worked, in technology for a sufficient amount of time at this point, you will have invoked the sudo command. If you don't know what it is, I'll talk about that just in a second. But it's basically, executing a command with admin privileges. And I would wager that most of us don't think about what that is, where it came from, or why we use it most of the time when we, invoke that command, typing it in on the command line. And sometimes, honestly, it's fun to dig into why these things are there, why we are using it, and why, a lot of times you'll see kind of people forget and, and then immediately cuss it out when they forget to use sudo and the system denies them entry or, the ability to do the command they were trying to do. So just to demo what it is that we're talking about, I brought up a little command line here. I'm running Linux on Windows subsystem for Linux, and I'm going to cd to the root directory. So in a Linux system, this would be the very base of the file system. And if we look at it, it's got all kinds of Linux things going on, boot, home, a bunch of other, special directories for stuff. If I just, as a regular logged in user, want to come in and make a new directory, just call it junk, or whatever, I can't do that. Or if I want to make, another directory, tester, right? It says I can't do that. Permission denied. If I come in here though and I type sudo dir tester, password, Now it lets me do that. And so if I look in and I see tester now is sitting here. So I just made a new file in the root of my Linux file system. Note that my regular user was not allowed to do that. I had to invoke the super user command, type in my password, and do that to make it happen. If I was somebody else, so I'm going to use a different command and log in as somebody. That's the password of password. Instead, so now you can see I'm logged in as somebody here, and I tried to do another root. I tried to make another test on the root directory. It's going to say, hey, I can't do it, permission denied. If I say, fine, let me do it, I type in this person's password, it'll come in and it'll yell at me for trying to do something that I'm not allowed to do. If somebody is not in the sudoers file, this incident will be reported. It's very threatening, it's telling me it's going to tell on me to somebody else. A pretty basic usage pattern though, right? I want to do something that affects the whole system. I need to type in sudo to make it go. So that is, I gotta restart from where it came from. So what is it? What did we just do? The command sudo is called substitute user do or super user do. Apparently now at this point is actually one of those GIF things as to what the acronym actually stands for. It allows you to run commands as the root or the admin user using your password from your login, so not the administrator's account. And we contrast that with doing kind of what I just did, where I typed SU for switch user into somebody to log into a different account. This prevents you from needing to log into the root or the admin account anytime that you want to actually change something. Train's coming by a lot today. The other thing that it does that's really important is it logs who the user was that just issued that command. So if I was logged in as somebody and I type sudo to run an administrator command, it'll have logged that to a central file so that when someone wants to come back and go, hey, who made this weird directory in the root of the file system, we know who did it. That's pretty much it, but a little bit more about what it is it's a highly configurable command line tool. It's there to execute commands with the administrator privileges, but without compromising the security of the super user. So the root account, the base, the admin, you don't really want everybody knowing the password to that thing, right? And log it in and be able to do whatever they want. This allows you to kind of contain that and just approve it. Certain users to do certain things based on how you configured it. It also provides traceability into the super user command by logging history and allowing you to kind of debug and monitor who's doing what and figure out who did it when it went wrong. As of today, I think it's available in all Linux distributions and in Mac OS, which is Unix based at this point. I say all Linux distributions. There are probably distros out there where somebody has decided to exclude sudo for whatever reason, but I would expect that to be an exception. I think if you log into any kind of Nix environment, as they call them, sudo is going to be there. Whether or not you can use it is up to the sudoers file, which is the main configuration file that drives this thing. It is just a file. You can go in and log into it using VI or Vim or whatever and see kind of what the rules are that set up who can do what. It allows plugins and extensions, so you can hook it into administration-wide systems like LDAP, so that if you have a new company machine that you issue, anyone who is in your company's directory can automatically be set up as administrators or as users or as whatever. And in my estimation, the sudo command is a cause of approximately 1 million curses per day of just people who try to do something and then they forgot to type sudo and then they cuss and then they type in sudo and then they're fine. And then it kind of keeps going. I know that I did it earlier today, just darn it, and forgot. And I imagine this is happening, especially given the fact that it's included everywhere in every Linux distribution that there is, with all of the people working on all of the Linux machines in the world. Happening quite a lot. So why is it there? It's there for good security principles. It gives you the separation of concerns, right? I can make sure that I have these accounts who are allowed to do things and these other accounts that are not allowed to do things. It allows you to have the principle of least privilege. So the accounts that I want are only allowed to do the things that I want them to do, and I don't have everybody with the ability to go kind of running around and just doing whatever they want with any given, Linux machine. It's got that traceability. So again, it's logging to at least at a minimum a central file on that machine. You can configure it to do a lot more. So if you have a cluster or a group or a whole bunch, you can have it send those logs off to a unified place, so I can monitor who and what in my administration is doing these things. And then as a system admin, as a sysadmin, and you're lazy, this is great. It effectively allows you to do your administrative tasks that you need to do when you're on a machine by just typing the command and going. It gives you a lease after you type in your password of typically about 5 minutes. Again, that's another one of those configurable things. But for 5, maybe 15 minutes is a newer default. You can continue to do your super user stuff as you without typing in your password. So it's great for making things easy and being lazy. Laziness is a virtue in technology, I think. So let's talk about a little bit about the history though. Why is it there? Where did it come into being? Why am I cussing at this thing that is getting in my way? This is my machine, right? And typically most of the time it's a Linux machine, and I should be able to do what I want, right? Why do I have to, tell sudo to let me do what I want to do? So I'm just gonna click over. You can actually go. There's a website out there, sudo.ws. I did a decent amount of Googling to kind of, bounce against this. This is pretty much echoed across a lot of the internet as much as I could find, with a decent Saturday afternoon's worth of effort. And this lines up pretty well. So we'll just kind of go over it real quick. In the early years, sudo was first conceived by Bob and Cliff around 1980 at the Department of Computer Science at SUNY Buffalo. It ran on a really old machine, and it probably did the very basic version, of the stuff that we just demoed. Then later in the summer of 1986, Gar Snyder released an enhanced version of sudo and started distributing around at CU Boulder. Remember where I came from, my alma mater out there. This is kind of just interesting again, but a small world these things tend to be. Then a group called the Root Group, it's another group that's out there in Boulder, Colorado. There are consultants, Dave Heave and Jeff Newsma. I actually met Dave Heave before, he's a nice guy. Wrote a new version of sudo with the enhanced sudoers format, so with the additional file and some of those more granular controls under a contract to a consulting firm called the Root Group. So they definitely did, as a consultant, make this for a customer, a client that they had contracted with. Came up with a new version of sudo to solve the problem. And then, later released under the GNU public license. After running around at CU for a while, a guy by the name of Todd C. Miller made a public release of the CU sudo, and he's been, kind of making bug fixes on it and making it better. Did some more stuff over the rest of the 90s, and right at the 99 timeframe. So this is, when the big internet bubble was going on. The .com stuff. They decided to drop the CU prefix. The Root Group's version of this really hadn't done anything in a few different years. So the version at University of Colorado became the version of sudo, and was then hosted up on an FTP site, presumably still held and run by this guy Todd. So by 2001, we already are seeing the proliferation of a lot of Linux systems and some big cloud.com stuff happening. So Linux at this point, starting to gain hold and sudo kind of proliferating out everywhere, and just pointing out that this is basically still being hosted on an FTP site and getting pulled in everywhere. In 2003 gets LDAP integration, Nationwide Mutual Insurance Company comes in and helps out. So this is where you get a lot of that enterprise support that people are looking for. 2005, Todd does some more stuff. And then in 2010, a company called Quest Software hires Todd, the same Todd C. Miller from back in 1994, to work and continue to work on sudo as part of his full-time job. It's just worth pointing out is the same one Todd C. Miller that has been working on this thing for at least 20 years at that point, and continuing to go with it. So back to the slides. So a little bit more about that session with the root group. So this is one of those things, and the reason why I in particular was drawn to drill down on sudo a little bit myself is, every time I type it in and cuss at it, if my dad was in earshot, 'cause he was, a technology guy too, and he would just say like, I had something to do with that, and I'd just be like, whatever, Dad, and then just kind of ignore him. But I started to look into this, and so Xilinx is the company that I did my first very initial internship with, helping with some of their LDAP stuff, funny enough. They were probably the company that the root group contracted with to develop their root group version of sudo. And if you listen to my dad tell the tales about what was going on at the time, they were still a little bit past the startup phase, but still very much so in that mode of, having a pile of engineers in California who, were trying to work on problems. Xilinx itself is a company that builds programmable microchips. But, these guys are making the software to make it all go. And one of the ways that they're doing that is, they all probably have their $16,000 workstations, which, by the way, if anybody sweats you about the laptop at your next job, just remind them how expensive things used to be back in the 90s and tell them to not worry about it. But, and they have a couple of mainframes, but for the most part, they're doing things on their expensive workstation, and they've got pieces of the whole set. This is before Git. This is before really good distributed computing stuff is coming along. And so, you'd have developer A with stuff running on their machine, developer B with stuff running on their machine, and they'd kind of need the pieces to go together to make it all work. And so what they would do is they would log in to the other, developer B's workstation and run a build or pull something from a script, on their machine and make it work with the machine that they were doing things on. And usually to make some of that stuff work, you need to do administrator level things, right? Moving files around, executing commands and that kind of stuff. So these people would share logins to each other's workstations and kind of go in and mess stuff up, or kind of blow things up, or just type things. They weren't really paying attention, because that's what you do when you're trying to develop and make things go. And apparently it was just chaos. And so what they had the root group come in and do, allegedly, again, if you believe what my father says, but it tracks as far as I can chase, down the history here, is that, they came in and they offered a solution here. So now we're going to give you the ability, instead of logging in as one of these privileged users on somebody else's machine, you're going to log in as you. You're going to use this command super user do now to invoke those commands that you need to run in order to make them go. We're going to have you start logging using the configuration in the sudo.rs file to a spot, so that when you blow it up, we know what happened and where and when, and then we can debug it. So, that's the kind of thing that a consulting firm ultimately came in and helped, kind of develop and, build out this first version of the script. Is just solving a business problem like everybody else had before it became this, big important part of kind of the modern architecture of stuff. And then you can continue to follow it a little bit after that. So I actually have a book here, the Unix System Administration Handbook. This is the version that CU published, University of Colorado, out of 1989. If you go to the back of the book, this has what I believe to be the CU version of the sudo command, just in the back of the book, just all there. That's the code as a C file. You presumably would be able to just buy the book and then copy by hand out of the book into any system that you needed to administer, and add the sudo files, and away you go. Like, this wasn't some big fancy software thing. That's kind of like how it proliferated and got around, right? It was these system administrators just reading the recipe, typing it in, tweaking it as they needed to, and away they went. And from there it went on, to do all that stuff that you kind of saw. And it blew up and kind of went everywhere. So now, like I said, it went from, a textbook being sold by the school, being, just a good practice that people started to adopt, developed by some consultants, and ended up being kind of included in everything. If we go and look at kind of where it is now, still maintained by Todd C. Miller. It's up on GitHub, synced to other source repositories, and then just kind of, like I said, pulled in anywhere. Actually, you can go look at it here on GitHub. Here is the sudo page. He's got other clones of this in Mercurial and a couple other build systems, but I mean, you can kind of see what he's doing here. You can just go look. here's the commits on main for sudo. We got Miller T. This is Todd again. Todd C. Miller did commits on it 2 hours ago as of this presentation. Same person, just toiling away, maintaining the sudo root command that's getting pulled into every Linux system out there. I think this happens a lot, actually, in technology. This huge critical piece, like this important thing that everybody relies on, is maintained by one person. You can go look, he's got his resume up there on the sudo site. It's down here somewhere, but you can go look it up. Todd's not shy, even though he lives in Utah. He's working still for the company Quest, that hired him to kind of just be a part of his job. And that's kind of where it is, and that's what it is, and that's why we have it. It's interesting, I think, when you look at history, that it wasn't really about the security stuff. I mean, it became about it later, right? Super important now. You download garbage off the internet. You don't want it to be able to, execute administrator stuff on your machine without your permission. So it became this huge critical thing. But yeah, that's kind of just where it is. And so, the next time you go and you type in sudo do this, whatever, like, now you know a little bit more kind of about where it came from. Here's just a couple of spots that I thought were nice and, that I was looking at. So there's the sudo website, there's the sudo get, there's Linux 101, which also kind of talks about its inclusion. But yeah, I left kind of the back half of this tech talk more to be kind of talking about what it was that we just did and hopefully have a little bit of discussion about it, as opposed to necessarily just spending, all of our time talking about sudo, which is interesting, but, to a point. So what did we just do? Again, if I was a user and I typed in sudo and I started cussing at it, like, I decided to dig in and figure out what it was. So we took a thing and we followed a trail to try and figure it out. I didn't take you on the Google journey with me, but I think we all, had the experience of typing stuff into Google and chasing things down and kind of figuring it out. And I really didn't do anything more than that, except for, some other just random assets I had lying around, conversation with dad, little textbook here, stuff you can go and pull up on Amazon if you're looking for. But I really did try and make a good faith attempt to learn a little bit more about what this thing was and where it came from. I really just want to understand it a little bit better, as opposed to just tripping over it and kind of not thinking about it again, as I think we are prone to do in technology quite a lot, right? How many times you just type in stuff, you're not really sure what you're doing, but you kind of go and doing it anyway. So this is a good thing. I think that we learned a little bit more about how a critical component works. I think we acquired knowledge, right, that will keep us from misusing this tool in the future. So if I'm trying to abuse my administrative privileges on a system, at least I know why. We know a little bit more about where to go if something else goes wrong. So if I do have an issue with sudo and I think it's down to the program itself, I could go and hit up Todd on GitHub, file a new issue on sudo and say, like, hey, I have a bug, help me fix it. And honestly, we learned a little bit more about why things work the way they do on Starship. So that's why I played that cool clip at the beginning of the talk, which was, Kirk is sitting there kind of lecturing Kirstiani's characters, a new trainee, she's got aspirations to be captain one day. And the lesson that he tells her while dealing with, a crisis is basically, you got to know why things work the way they do if you're going to be able to, solve a real world problem one day. And man, do you really need to know that, you can use your Admiral codes to log into the other ship 99% of the time when you're being Admiral Kirk or whatever? Probably not. But man, that one time it came in handy was really, really useful. And, maybe I'll be a little less, angry about it the next time I stub my toe over sudo, and forget to type it in or something, a little bit. But on the other hand, maybe this was a waste of time, right? So we could have been doing something else. I didn't need to spend a half hour of your time talking about a command that really is there to have you execute, install, or whatever you need to do on your machine, and then move on with your day and completely forget about it. You're never going to use it. You're not going to need to know about the sudo file and how to configure it, and how to do all these things. It's kind of immaterial to the rest of your time. And honestly, this is fine to do in a tech talk, in an after work kind of setting where you're not trying to get something done. We'll say that going down rabbit holes does present you with a context switch, right? So if you're actually, in the middle of your workday trying to get work done, you just took your brain away from the thing that you were working on to go learn about something else. And you know, then you're gonna have to stop learning about that and come back to the thing that you were doing. You know, there's a lot of psychological research out there right now on sort of the dangers of the context switch and why you don't really want to let yourself be distracted and brought down, you know, some other weird rabbit hole pathway. You know, I'd argue that probably maybe you need to find a balance there, right? Though, if you never spend the time to work to learn how the starship works, are you going to be able to solve that super critical problem when it comes up? I think that understanding the fundamentals of how things work, you know, the underpinnings of what's going on, ultimately will make you a better engineer, a better, you know, person interacting with technology in whatever your capacity is, right? You know, if you're just blindly entering commands, not really understanding what it is that you're doing, you know, you're not going to get, you're not going to be able to do the full potential of the thing that you're working with, and you're not going to be able to solve all problems that you want to be able to solve. So, yeah, I think it can be a waste of time sometimes. I think it's a really good thing to do other times. I am myself a proponent of occasionally going down those rabbit holes and just taking a moment to, you know, investigate the trivial little thing that maybe was bugging me and I didn't fully understand. But I did kind of want to leave some time open to talk about that a little bit. Because I've been talking this whole time and I don't really like hearing myself talk that much. But, you know, I kind of want to talk about, you know, have you had any of these experiences lately? Did you go down any rabbit holes that were useful, that you found really kind of, you know, enlightened you in a certain way? And was it worth it? Did it take you away from doing something you're supposed to be doing? Or, you know, did you, was it super productive time? I don't know. Does anyone have a thought, story, anecdote, anything? Chip in. And I haven't been reading the chat if there's been discussion going on there.
I was going to say, I think, you know, as an early career developer, I find myself going down a lot of rabbit holes and getting distracted and digging into things. And sometimes, you know, you find the answer and sometimes you don't. But the thing that I think I notice about a lot of senior developers is they know all the little bits and pieces and information about why things work the way they do. So I think over time, those things that you are able to figure out really seem to add up and benefit you. So I would say worth it.
Yeah, adding on to that, I think that for me, you know, I've kind of just started my dev journey. I've been coding for like six to 8 months. And I think, you know, my background's in chemistry, organic chemistry specifically. And I find that rabbit holes are really important in the beginning of learning. That, you know, it's like, for me, it's like the kind of almost exponential curve, right? It's really slow to begin with, but I think that is some critical, you know, wasted time, right? To really understand what's going on. So I often find myself like doing a lot of deep dives into maybe things that aren't that relevant to what I, you know, maybe I'm like, you know, I took a break from JavaScript and I'm doing something else, learning about like, I don't know, like CSS or something. But I find that, you know, a month later, that deep dive actually really complemented what I'm trying to do overall. So, yeah.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense to me. Yeah, I feel like I've gone down rabbit holes in my career, and I've also missed opportunities to do that, and it like hurt me in a big way. So like one example is caching. So kind of like never fully understood caching and kind of just took it for granted and didn't think about it too much. And there was a point in my career where we were working on a big like live streaming event where I was working, and it was the system we had set up was super reliant on caching. And I did something that kind of made it so the caching wouldn't work, not really because I didn't fully understand it. I hadn't gone down the rabbit hole. I didn't really understand how the different layers of the stack like interacted and things. And it ended up completely crashing the entire event. It was terrible. Like one of the worst days of my career. And had I gone down that rabbit hole instead of just taking it for granted, you know, maybe I could have avoided that situation, right? So I think it can definitely be worth it. And I could even say I'm gonna stall here for a minute because while Lyle boots up his computer again because apparently he crashed. So he gets for running Linux. Oh no, he's on Windows. Anyway, like one of the rabbit holes I would recommend all of, welcome back. Welcome back, Lyle. I'd recommend everybody who's an early career developer to go down is HTTP. Understand that protocol because everything else is built on top of that. You know, response codes and like just how HTTP works, like the stateless nature of it, all those kinds of things. You know, how a get, post, put, all those requests, how they're actually formatted. Because once you look into it, it's actually not all that complicated, but it has big implications for everything else you do. So anyway, welcome back, Lyle.
And one thing I want to add on to that, Andrew, is that I think that rabbit holes are really what builds expertise. I think that, you know, if you think about higher education, master's, PhD, they're just giant rabbit holes. And then in the process, there's, I think, a skill to rabbit holing. There's like, in the process, there's ways, I think that, especially for my brain, like when I go in a rabbit hole, there's skills I learn about how to do it better. So I think that, you know, it's really advantageous to, you know, kind of optimize your rabbit holing. So, you know, when you know how to go, how far to go, and when you need to kind of come back out and you've gotten what you needed. Because then when you do it, you oftentimes I find myself learning more things, and I'm like, oh, cool, some more things to look at next time I do this.
Yeah, there was a Facebook engineer who wrote an article maybe a year or two ago, probably, well, I always forget about the pandemic, probably 2 years ago, where he was talking about his way of sort of accumulating knowledge like this. And his goal wouldn't be to learn everything about something. Like he wouldn't go all the way down the rabbit hole. His goal was to be like to learn enough of it that he could ask an expert smart questions about it, like have a smart conversation about it. And then like that's like a good level to get to. And then you do go to the next topic, and then you start to make connections across them. And then like things really start to make sense. So anyway, I don't know, Lyle, if that kind of fits with your experience of kind of doing these things, but.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I apologize. My machine blue screened on me, which hasn't never done as far as I'm aware. Of course, but it timed it well because it was discussion time. So it sounds like y'all carry on without me. But yeah, one thing I didn't explicitly mention was, you know, I did kind of time box myself a little bit on this activity. So, you know, I gave it a good couple hours on Saturday, you know, to really kind of dig in and find some details. But, you know, in particular about that kind of fuzzy time where it goes from being this script that everybody enters from the back of a book to just included by default in everything. You know, it gets a little bit hard to pin down if there was like a singular series of events that caused that to happen, or it was just kind of a thing that happened. And researching that didn't feel particularly useful at the end of the day. Like, it'd be kind of nice to know just for the sake of completeness on the history, but it's not going to actually, you know, affect my day at all. And, you know, it probably wouldn't return the effort and time to, you know, kind of go and do that. So, you know, I do think there's, you know, kind of what had been said before, you know, a skill to kind of learning how to go down rabbit holes and really kind of set those boundaries for yourself on where you're going to stop, right? Because a lot of stuff you can go on forever. And if we really wanted to look at this, like we could say, oh, let's go look at then the history of Unix and Linux and where did this get into Mac OS? And there's all kinds of other little side branches, right? You can decide to go follow, and that's probably going to be true of a lot of stuff. So yeah, I mean, like just enough is you know, there's no definition of what that is for any given thing, but I think it's a good idea to kind of have a feel for what that means. And that's another thing, maybe that's something you develop over time too.
Yeah, I would agree with, yeah, I feel like a lot of times my rabbit holes end up being a choose your own adventure book. And I just keep going through that way. And it really, like in the chat, Andrew mentioned time boxing as another great technique. And it's taken me a long time to realize I need to set a timer and almost like write a post-it for my own use to be able to like, no, you're researching this. And if you start getting off the track, go back to this, because this is the rabbit hole. You can do the other ones later. But it's taken me a while to develop that that restraint of researching everything.
I came across this term I just put in the chat a few months ago called yak shaving. Sorry about my dogs in the background. I was trying to figure out how to do a thing, and to figure that thing out, I needed to figure out another thing, but to figure that out, I needed to read about this other thing, and then that linked me to this other thing that I wanted to read, and suddenly I was on a completely separate topic that was seemingly unrelated to my original goal, and that's what yak shaving is. And rabbit holing can very quickly lead to that kind of yak shaving, which I think is probably not productive. If you can sort of keep your focus, your blinders on to what your actual task is, then rabbit holing is super useful. But yeah, it can be dangerous.
And I think that, in terms of like being a new kind of developer, for me, starting coding was one big rabbit hole, right? And I think, it's hard to know where to start. And I think like we were talking about, Lenny, that kind of when you start to like kind of almost, it's not really not related, but it's like you're missing pieces. So like, for my background in science, it's like if I'm reading a research paper and there's a lot of words I don't know, I have to like read that word and like find a paper about that. If I don't, and it's, you start to keep going back until it's simple enough, then you can go forward. But I think in that process, it seems, at least for me, I'm like, I'm wasting my time. Is this even important? Am I like, doing this wrong? And I think that it just takes time for your brain to learn, right? For my brain to learn and like process. And I think that's the kind of phase I'm in right now in my learning, is that like, my brain just needs a lot of time to like say, okay, we learned all this stuff, maybe do a hackathon, like, try to apply it, do something, practical, and then start learning again, because you kind of need to, break that up.
Well, yeah, and I remember also too thinking that, some of these things, especially when you're new, can just feel super daunting, right? You want to go and look up this stuff, and you just realize that there's so much. And I mean, we're just adding more stuff every day as we go, right? So there's just so much out there. It's impossible to go and look it all up, but you kind of want to learn a lot, as you go. And you can really feel like you're diving into kind of the ocean, as you're doing it. I even was nervous about doing a talk on sudo, even though like, I just touched the surface of it. But, I expect someone, with years and years and years of experience, come in and just be like, you got the whole thing wrong. You completely misunderstood the point of all of this. You know what I mean? Like there's all these things you don't understand. And I, learned over time to not kind of be afraid of that stingy guru, sort of made up demon in my head that, would come in and kind of knock you down for not knowing everything, right? When you talk about something, because I think really ultimately no one actually knows everything. You know a bit, you know a lot. But it can be really, A, you want to dive in, you want to look up at all that stuff, but B, also you also know that there's no way to actually do it, right? You know that that's an unachievable task, and I think that can turn you off of doing it a lot of the time, like because you know that you can't know everything, so why bother learning anything? You know what I mean? And I think there's a little bit of a psychic kickback that you kind of have to remind yourself that that's not really a thing to worry about. I don't know.
Yeah, I just wanted to say something with regards to that, because like this has to do with something about depth and breadth. Like personally, sometimes I will be trying to learn one particular thing, and I might not really get it very well. So I like really digging deeper, like maybe going to, if I can really learn that particular concept, but it's maybe some other tutorial, some other person that's like simplify it for them. So the process of doing that, you get to find out that you might get easily carried away with a lot of things. So basically, it's important that there are some very key concepts that we need to know, especially as developers. Then once you know these key concepts, you find that every other thing that you are going to learn is easily hinged on this. You find it very hard to comprehend other concepts. But if we don't really understand these basic concepts, and then we just jump into any other thing, find that you find it more difficult, or it takes a longer period of time for you to really get to understand those things. But if you should go for these basic things, or the things that the whole system is able to get those ones, then any other thing you can easily move around that easily up it.
I touched on some of the concept stuff too with, I said things like principle of least privilege and, some of that stuff that like you probably hear a bunch of different times as you're going through things. You'll run across it, more than once. And it comes up in different places and you might not know what it is the first time you see it, but then the next time you run across it, you'll also kind of see it again, you know what I mean? And like, so you know that, oh, this is why I only have limited account permissions or limited, role permissions and, that kind of stuff. And again, that shows up in different places. It shows up in OAuth, it shows up in, just general things, but it's, those concepts, I think that, carry on and bounce back and forth. Some chat here too. Important to consider that some people are more generalist thinkers and others love to specialize. I think there's a whole bunch of words to say about generalism versus specialization. Actually, so I mentioned at the lead-in of the talk. So if you missed it, I'll just say it again. Like today's my last day at the company that I was with. I'm moving on to a new role. I'm moving on to a new role at the startup. They're very early on in their things, and I really did try to kind of advertise myself as like a generalist person, and not someone who's like a specialist in a certain specific area. And I think there's a dichotomy between the people who really kind of focus in on being like a specific technology person. And then there's, people like me who kind of like to stick their fingers in everything. But I would say that I do think that the act of diving in and looking things up and at least like, kind of understanding the concepts and the reasons why I like a specific thing are probably at least pretty universal to, kind of everybody working around in technology. But yeah, right. Like, I think maybe specialist people do that drilling down a little bit more on specific things, right? I don't know. Any other, pressing thoughts you got on your mind?
Yeah, I wanted to ask something with regards to sudo, because you found that especially programs that has to do with writing to things and what have you. There are some that you can easily run through even without with administrative privileges and still work. But there are some that, especially if you need to install it globally on your system, it will require this add administrative privileges.
I'm sorry, I had a little bit of buzz there. I couldn't quite, I think, was there a question? I just couldn't quite parse it out. Sorry, like just a little bit of feedback going on in the background.
Okay, maybe I can type it.
Yeah, sorry. Speaking to someone who also had my own technical difficulties today, it's just unfortunately a thing that happens, especially in Zoom land.
One thing I want to add, just talking about, conversation of like kind of rabbit holes and being a new dev and stuff. I think that for me, I have gotten to a point where it's like, I just have to like start building things. I got my first little kind of like part-time front end gig just to like build a front end for someone's public GitHub. So I'm doing that this weekend. But like, I starting to feel a little bit like that, like I've finished phase 1. Right, but now it's time for like phase 2, and that's kind of where I found you guys and started coming to these, because I'm just like, I need to kind of push myself to the next level, and it's just challenging to do that, and to like start to feel comfortable being, I guess, more independent and taking off the kind of tutorial training wheels, if that makes any sense, and starting to really say like, you know, okay, I did a hackathon, I did a project, I can like build these things, and now I just need to start new projects and like get my hands dirty and like kind of figure out that whole messy thing that happens when you're learning.
Yeah, I think it's so important when you're early on, just build and build and build, you know, project after project. And, you know, something I saw some good advice lately around for portfolio projects is that, you know, 1 or 2 high quality projects is more impressive than a bunch of stuff that's like half finished, you know. But I think in the beginning, like it's really important to try to build this thing, try to build that thing and see how far you can get, because all those little things, you're going to run into different obstacles trying to do different types of apps and stuff. And all that contributes to maybe some rabbit holes that you go down, or just different things that you learn. But eventually you want to do kind of hone in on, you know, like have a project or 2 that's like really high quality finished, you know, somebody could actually kind of log in and use it and that kind of thing, in order to, you know, kind of get that job. But you got to get there first, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you. I think we're running close. So I think if we got any other questions or something to come through chat, cool. But otherwise,
Adema, are you still writing your question?
Yes, but maybe I could send it to you. That's better.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, your audio is just coming in a little bit like kind of broken up, so it's hard to understand you. But
can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. It's just a little hard to understand. You could post your question on the meetup page, and Lyle, I'm sure you'd be happy to go there and answer, right?
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. This was fascinating. It was like really fun. It's fun learning. I always pronounce it. I used to pronounce it sudo, but then I started pronouncing it sudo because I think it's, you know, for me it's short for super user do something. So I was like, oh, it must be sudo.
Or switch user do.
Right.
Depending on, or substitute user do, whatever it is.
Yeah, I've never heard those ones before, but yeah, it's yeah, I figure like it must be do because that's what you're doing. But anyway, it's fun hearing about the history of that. It's fun hearing your connection to it too, like because your dad was at CU. Is that why? Was he around that, or?
So he was working at Xilinx. They were actually out in California at the time.
Okay.
Later, we all moved back into Colorado, and then I went to the University of Colorado, and then kind of ran into some of these other people again. So again, it's just kind of funny how the small world thing happens sometimes. You think for as many people that are out there in technology and stuff that you know never see people again, and you do. You just keep bumping into people. It happens.
Yeah, for sure. That's funny. That's cool.
Before we wrap up, I just had a question about Collab Lab, if you could answer, Andrew. So I recently applied, and I'm just curious, like how like the timing of it works. I tried to look on the page, I couldn't find it. Is it like part-time, or does it have to be, you have to do full-time? What's the deal with that?
Yeah, for sure. And for anybody who's catching up on this later, we have applications are open. They close on Saturday night for the next cohort, which is going to kick off July 11th. So yeah, the way it works, it's a 5-hour-a-week commitment, and
cool.
So the team kind of decides on an hour at the weekend where they do a synchronous call, and then the rest of the week you're paired up with somebody and you figure out when works for you to kind of get the work done. So
okay, perfect.
Yep. It's designed to be done alongside a full-time job or caregiving responsibilities or whatever else people have going on.
Yeah, that's perfect then. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Lyle, thank you for the talk. It was really cool. It was really fun. Thanks everybody for coming. Adema, please do ask your question on Meetup so we can get to that. And yeah, thanks for coming, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thanks, everybody.
We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yep.